at least that somewhat look into history, know that this was a false flag event and the purpose of it. As far as U.S. history, this is probably where it begins for most people. We're going to cover some that they're probably not aware of, bringing us up to date to the current administration. But the USS Maine in history is probably the first one that people can recognize.
And of course, the official explanation as to the sinking of the Maine was that a Spanish mine had run into the side of the ship, which numerous investigations since then have pretty much discounted that possibility. From all the evidence gathered, it looked like the explosion came from within the ship. The magazines themselves had exploded.
Very interesting.
Next we have the infamous Reichstag fire. On the night of February 27th, 1933, the German parliament building, the Reichstag, caught on fire and was completely destroyed. The fire was blamed on Mr. van der Lubbe, a young Dutch insurrectionist and unemployed bricklayer. The event was utilized by the opportunist Adolf Hitler to immediately pass the Reichstag fire decree the following day, which suspended most civil liberties, and then, of course, he would later go on to pass the Enabling Act. Does that sound familiar at all?
The Reichstag fire is admitted by the Germans. I think everything came out in the Nuremberg trials, the documents they found in Nazi Germany after the war, so it's admitted false flag event. Governments have been doing this throughout history. This is nothing new. It's just something that most people are not aware of.
In fact, what's ironic here is Germany just recently overturned the conviction of van der Lubbe. Astounding.
I bet that made him feel a lot better because wasn't he executed?
Yes,
Didn't they execute him?
Next we have the Gleiwitz incident, which happened on the night of August 31st, 1939. A small group of German operatives dressed in Polish uniforms seized a German radio station on the town of Gleiwitz near the Polish border and broadcast anti-German messages spoken in Polish. A German also known for sympathizing with the Poles who had been arrested the previous day by the Gestapo was dressed to look like the saboteur, then killed by lethal injection, given gunshot wounds, and left dead at the scene, so he appeared to have been killed while attacking the station. His corpse was subsequently presented as proof of the attack to the police and press. On the day following the incident, Germany launched Operation Fall Weiss, the invasion of Poland and the beginning of World War II.
That was one I wasn't familiar with, but I found that very interesting.
Pearl Harbor. Throughout the 1940s, the United States had intercepted and decoded Japanese messages leading up to Pearl Harbor. On the morning of December 7th, 1941, at 6:45 a.m., a Japanese submarine was shot through the conning tower and then depth charged, trying to enter the mouth of Pearl Harbor behind the USS Antares. The crew of the attacking USS Ward, an older-style four-stack destroyer, saw the midget sub lifted out of the water by depth charges after firing the fatal shot from its 4-inch side gun. Unfortunately, Naval Command in Pearl Harbor ignored the Ward's report, and the aerial attack thus began at 8 a.m. The Japanese squadron, which incidentally consisted of 176 planes, this is the first wave, was also picked up on radar at 7 a.m. and simply disregarded as an expected squadron of B-17s that were expected to be flying near Pearl Harbor. The dismissal of this radar information exhibits a highly negligent and careless act. So despite the attempted entry by a Japanese submarine and subsequent sinking of it, and the incoming squadron seen on radar, intercepted Japanese messages, and known activity, Pearl Harbor was never set on alert that morning. Hundreds of sailors were allowed to remain asleep on their day off, this was Sunday, and many would die in their beds. As a result of Pearl Harbor, the nation would rally to a call to arms, and over 1 million men would volunteer for military service.
It's interesting on Pearl Harbor now. The History Channel's documenting a lot of this. We could spend all day discussing this. Hopefully we'll get some phone calls on this subject when we go to our phones, but our president had ran on the fact that he was going to keep us out of the war, so the Pearl Harbor event was a pretext to get us into World War II.
Next, we have Operation Gladio, which was a stay-behind operation by NATO, the CIA, MI6 after World War II to counter communist leftist influence in Europe. These state-sponsored secret army used false flag terrorism against their populations in order to frame left-wing groups, influence elections, and to justify increased security. Gladio has been confirmed by various governments and condemned by the European Parliament.
I want to do one before we go to break that I urge everyone to go to your computers and look this up. It should astound you. I want to report on this broadcast. If there is one thing I want you to learn about, it's the Northwoods document, or Operation Northwoods, penned and signed by L.L. Lemitzer, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, March 13, 1962. I looked it up on the National Security Agency's website and printed it off. In this document, they penned to paper to fake events to fool the American people into backing a war with Cuba. It calls for land-friendly Cubans in uniform, stage attacks on Guantanamo base, blow up naval vessels, and blame Cuba. I've got to tell you, growing up the way I did, going to church, school, learned to love my country, I would have never guessed that our government was capable of diabolical, treasonous plans as these. And so easily proven. I brought a complete copy with me today of the Northwoods operation. I'm saying to you, look into the past and then evaluate the present, and you might realize how we got here. I urge everyone to Google Operation Northwoods or Northwoods document and look at your evening news. Nothing has changed except perhaps it has gotten worse. I assure you this will be very interesting. I'm going to read directly from the Northwoods document. Incidents to establish a credible attack, not in chronological order. Start rumors, use clandestine radio. Land friendly Cubans in uniform over the fence to stage attacks on the base. Capture Cubans, friendly Cuban saboteurs inside the base. Start riots near the base with friendly Cubans. Blow up ammunition inside the base. Start fires. Burn aircraft on the base. Lob mortar shells from outside of the base into the base. Now we're talking about Guantanamo Bay. Sabotage ships in the harbor. Sink ships near the harbor entrance. Conduct funerals of mock victims. We could blow up a U.S. ship in Guantanamo Bay and blame the Cubans. We could blow up a drone vessel anywhere in the Cuban waters. We could arrange to cause such incidents in the vicinity of Havana or Santiago as a spectacular result of Cuban attacks from the air, sea, or both. It's just incredible to read, and even though this is 1962, I don't think a whole lot has changed since then. This is evidence of our government being complicit in taking out terror attacks to legitimize wars with whomever they choose. We're going to go to break now. When we come back, we're going to come back with your phone calls, and we want to hear what you got to say on this, and then we're going to continue our discussion. This is a pretext to the coming weeks where we're going to discuss the facts and the fiction of 9/11. We'll be back in just a minute.